Welcome to another episode, everyone. He was a black SouthSider, a black from a Latino gang who murdered his own homeboy for being a racist. Let's get into it.
They were supposed to be on the same side, same clique, same color, same code, but one warm night in Monrovia, all that went out the window. Words were said, pride got bruised, and a single shot turned a party into a crime scene. The shooter, he wasn't a rival, he wasn't even an outsider, and that's what made it worse. This is not your average hood story. It's not about turf beef or gang rivals catching each other slipping. It's about what happens when loyalty, race, and respect don't line up. Before the headlines, before the courtroom, and way before the street ever started whispering his name in that way, it was just Dexter Paul Williams. Born and raised in Southern California, not a lot is out there about his early childhood. But by the time the late 80s came around, Dexter had already made a name for himself in the SGV. Folks didn't call him Dexter, though. In the streets, they knew him as Sombra, Spanish for shadow. Now, being a black dude in a predominantly Latino hood wasn't unusual back then, but what was rare, a black man being fully patched into a Sureño gang. And not just any Sureño set, Sombra was one of the few black OGs in Monrovia Nuevo Barrio, MNV, a clique with roots deep in the San Gabriel Valley, east of Los Angeles. By the mid-90s, Sombra wasn't just around, he was respected. Word was, he had put in real work, done time, and held it down behind bars when it mattered. Younger homies listened when he spoke. Even the ones that didn't like him, they kept it respectful. In the street,
people ask sometimes, can you really be accepted from a different racist gang? You're black and you go to another race gang, and it has happened where they're truly accepted. And the black gangs have white people from their gangs, Hispanic people from their gangs, and these individuals are truly accepted and respected. But of course, you run the risk of some individuals from that gang still not liking you or not liking your race. Something comes up, words are exchanged. Let's see what transpired.
Rank don't come with age. It comes with what you've done and how you carry it. And Sombra carried that OG presence like a coat he never took off. But here's the thing, being respected ain't the same as being accepted. While he repped blue like the rest of MNV, his skin made him stand out, not just to rivals, but sometimes to his own set. There was always a line, even if nobody said it out loud. And Sombra, he walked that line every day. What's wild is, he still stayed loyal to the Barrio, never flipped, never tried to switch cliques, but all that loyalty, all that work he put in, it didn't stop one night in August 2004 from turning everything upside down.
And me, myself, all due respect to the other races that are from a different racist gang, but hell to the motherfucking no. I could never do it because you see what he just said? He's going through all kind of stuff. There's a boundary there. He's walking a fine line, making sure not to disrespect anyone. He's extra careful. Of course, you don't want to disrespect anyone anyway, but he's extra careful because he's black. So you're worried about your own gang turning on you because of your race. This is the gang that you're supporting. This is the gang that you're killing for. This is the gang you're going to prison for. The gang who may possibly turn on you because they don't like your ethnicity. It doesn't add up to me. That's out.
And it definitely didn't stop the bullet that left one of his own bleeding out on the pavement. To understand how Sombra ended up where he did, you gotta understand Monrovia. It's one of those places that don't make the news unless something wild happens, but the streets talk and the streets remember. Sitting east of Pasadena, Monrovia looks like any other middle-sized suburb in LA County. But if you were from the South Side in the mid-80s or 90s, you knew it was a whole different story. Back then, Monrovia had its clean blocks and postcard neighborhoods up north. But south of the tracks, that's where the real action was. Monrovia Nuevo Barrio, or MNV, held it down over there. It started as a mostly Chicano gang in the 70s, but by the 90s, it was a full-fledged Sureño set, repping the number 13, flying the color blue, and staying in line with La M, the Mexican mafia. And once the prison politics started filtering down into the streets, it wasn't just about turf anymore, it became about race too. Across the freeway in neighboring Duarte, you had the Do-Rock Crips, a black set that had long coexisted with the Latino gangs. But in the late 90s and early 2000s, that piece started cracking. Graffiti started coming with racial slurs, innocent folks started getting hit, and a Cold War turned hot fast. Monrovia and Duarte were in a back and forth that racked up over 70 shootings in just 18 months. It was in this pressure cooker that Sombra operated, a black OG inside a Latino gang at a time when just being black in certain hoods could get you pressed. He was accepted enough to rock with MNV, but the deeper the war with black gangs got, the more isolated his spot became. Still, Sombra held his ground. He was MNV through and through. Whatever issues brewed under the surface, he kept it pushing. But when your skin don't match the color of the crew you're in, and when things get personal instead of political, those cracks eventually show. And on August 28, 2004, that crack turned into a full-blown split. What happened next wasn't random. It was built on years of tension, silence, and unspoken rules that finally got broken. It was a Saturday night in Monrovia, warm and quiet, like most late summer evenings in the San Gabriel Valley. On West Olive Avenue, siblings Gabriela and Angel Ruiz were throwing a party. Typical neighborhood gathering, music bumping, beers flowing, people in and out, but the crowd wasn't all the same. Gabriela had her set of friends hanging out on the patio, mostly regular folks, not affiliated with any gangs. Angel's side of the party, though, looked different. His crew was back in the alley where a lot of the Monrovia Nuevo Barrio homies had posted up. That's where the gang energy sat heavy. As the night pushed on, more heads pulled up, including a few names that carried weight. Derek Travieso Charles, Jorge Snuffy Mendez, Teddy Valente Tamayo, and Ernesto Babyface Granado, all known MNV members, were in the mix. Then sometime late in the evening, Sombra rolled up. He parked his light-colored car in the alley, stepped out, and moved with the kind of energy that came from years in the life. He wasn't there to act loud or show off. He just made his way over to the party, said what's up to some of the homies outside, then drifted toward the house. That's when things got a little weird. Gabriela's friends didn't really know Sombra. To them, he looked like an older gang member who walked up out of nowhere, and his presence made folks uneasy.
And there you go. You're in a racial environment, according to this narrator, but I'm sure it's accurate. Out there in the valley, you know, these gangs did end up becoming racist. First, it was about gang banging. Then some of it became about racism. They don't like black people. And you're black as hell, and you're from that gang. And then they have tensions with the Do-Rocks, with the Do-Rock Crips. His gang does. So now they're really becoming probably more anti-black as they're going through it, not just anti-Crip, not just anti-Do-Rock, anti-black. This is how it goes. But now you're still one of them, and you're pulling up to the party. Everyone in your hood knows who you are. I'm sure they should. But apparently not everyone at the party knows who you are. So you come walking up, and there's all of this tension with these other gangs or black gangs in the area, and here you come walking up, and some of these individuals don't know you. There's all Hispanics there. Yeah, I can see how this is about to be a problem. But you probably shouldn't have your dumb ass over there any motherfucking way.
Asked one of the guests, Joseph Escobar, for a cigarette, a Marlboro Red. Joseph gave him one, but dipped out almost immediately after, later telling detectives he just didn't feel comfortable. Others followed, peeling off one by one. In less than a few minutes, Sombra was left standing there alone. Now, it's hard to say exactly what was running through his head, but witnesses said he looked a little thrown off. Whether it was frustration, embarrassment, or just that feeling of being the odd one out, he seemed irritated. Gabriella noticed the vibe and tried to keep things smooth. She walked over and asked if he was looking for someone, told him Angel's people were in the alley. Sombra didn't argue. He just nodded and made his way back toward the alley behind the house, where the rest of the MNV heads were posted. That's where things shifted. Nobody expected what came next, but looking back, the signs were there. In the alley, Ernesto Babyface Granado, who was around 27 at the time, had linked up with Teddy Tamayo earlier in the night. Babyface was known for his short temper, especially when he had a few drinks in him. He wasn't some big shot in the gang, but he wasn't a nobody either. Younger than Sombra and part of a newer wave of MNV members, he came with that loud, confident type of energy that could rub people the wrong way. Witnesses said that Sombra and Ernesto ended up face to face at some point, not just bumping into each other, but standing there in what folks later called a confrontational posture. According to testimony, the conversation didn't stay friendly for long. Some tension kicked off between them. Words were exchanged. Then somebody in the group, most likely Ernesto, let off a racial slur, something direct, personal, and heavy, not just general street talk.
Yeah, of course, and that's and that's going to be the go-to at all times. In order to hurt you, to injure you, they're going to go to the race talk. When involved in an argument, I've heard countless black women say, married to white men, that as soon as they get into an argument, the white man brings the race up, calls them the N-word, whatever. You know, they're looking to injure you and hurt you and use your race against you, while you're sitting there thinking that these are your homeboys and that you're safe here, the hood that you would die and kill for. Meanwhile, they're yelling racial epithets at you.
But a straight-up insult targeting Sombra's black identity. There was no swing, no big fight. Ernesto just threw his arms up, like daring Sombra to react, then turned his back and started walking off like it was nothing. But in gang culture, especially with an OG present, turning your back like that after disrespecting someone ain't nothing. It's a challenge, a test. And with that insult ringing in his ears, Sombra didn't hesitate. He pulled out a handgun. No yelling, no warning. He aimed and fired one shot straight to the back of the head. Just like that, Ernesto Babyface Granado hit the ground. It was fast, quiet, and final. Chaos broke out immediately. Folks started running. Screams echoed down the alley. Sombra dipped toward his car while others froze, still trying to process what just happened. Nobody expected a murder at that party, let alone from one of their own. And the fact that it came from someone with the same set, same block made it hit different. From that moment, the party was done. The neighborhood was never going to look at that alley the same again. And Sombra, he wasn't just an OG anymore. He was now a shooter with one of his own lying dead behind him. By the time that shot rang out in the alley behind West Olive Avenue, the whole mood flipped instantly. What had been just another weekend kickback turned into a panic scene. People scattered in every direction. Those who didn't see the shooting firsthand still heard the bang. Loud, sharp, no mistaking it for fireworks. Inside the house, Gabriela Ruiz thought maybe her brother Angel or one of the others was just messing around with firecrackers. It wasn't until she stepped outside and looked down the alley that she realized something was off. From a distance, she could make out someone lying still on the pavement near a parked car, and folks standing frozen around him like they didn't know what to do next. As she got closer, the picture became clear. It was Ernesto Babyface Granado, face down, not moving, blood beginning to...
That's just a cold way to go. You walking away, turn your back on somebody, and they pop you in the head. You don't see it coming, you don't brace yourself, you don't say your goodbyes to yourself. It's just a sudden death, bro. You turn your back, you walking one way, bow, pop you in the back of the head and you just fall out. That's a cold way to go, man. But it is true. One has to be extremely careful. You can't talk crazy to someone and then turn your back on them. That's total disrespect. You're saying, I just said what I said, I just did what I said, and you're not going to do nothing about it. That's what that means.
Ooh. Gabriella didn't see the shooter pull the trigger, but when she turned her attention to the nearby car, Sombra's light-colored ride, she saw him already inside, engine running. The only problem? Ernesto's body was behind his back tire. That's when things turned cold. According to Gabriella's testimony, Sombra put the car in reverse and actually tried to back over Babyface's body to get out of there. The wheels bumped against Ernesto's corpse, stopping short. Gabriella ran over and started banging on the trunk, screaming for him to stop. "There's a body behind your car," she shouted. "You can't leave." Others nearby were yelling for someone to call 911, but Sombra wasn't trying to stick around. According to multiple witness accounts, he told Gabriella flat out, "Don't call the police." That was his only concern, getting out clean. Gabriella's brother, Angel, stepped in to help. Together, they pulled Ernesto's body out of the way. No one was sure if he was dead yet, but he wasn't responding. His head wound was bad and there was blood on the concrete. Once the body was cleared, Sombra didn't say a word. He just hit the gas and disappeared into the night, leaving the scene behind like it never happened. By the time the sheriffs arrived around 2:30 a.m., the party was over, the crowd had thinned, and Ernesto Babyface Granado was still lying in that alley, barely clinging to life. He would later be pronounced dead from a single gunshot to the back of the head. He was 27 years old, a father, a gang member, and now the victim of a killing that came from inside his own set. In most gang-related shootings, witnesses are hard to come by. That's not because no one saw anything, it's because the streets operate by a different code. The code says you don't talk, you don't point fingers, you keep quiet, even if you saw the whole thing go down. That night in Monrovia was no different. When Monrovia Police Detective Robert Manuel started working the case, he did what most homicide detectives would do. He talked to everyone he could. That included Gabriella, Angel, Joseph Escobar, and anyone else who had been seen near the scene. But outside of Gabriella's testimony about Sombra trying to drive off and telling her not to call the cops, there was very little to go on. Nobody wanted to name the shooter. Even people who later admitted to being there claimed they didn't see the shot get fired. A few said they left before it happened. Others gave vague, inconsistent stories. One witness told police they heard something loud, but didn't see who did what. Even Gabriella, who was one of the few to confront Sombra after the shooting, couldn't confirm that he was the one who pulled the trigger. She never saw the gun, only saw what happened after. Without a murder weapon, a solid eyewitness, or anyone willing to say Sombra did it, the case went nowhere fast. Detectives had collected a few cigarette butts from the scene, which were bagged and stored along with the rest of the physical evidence. But at the time, no one knew they'd matter. There was no forensic urgency, no DNA testing done, no follow-up that led to a solid lead. Meanwhile, Sombra was gone. He dipped out quietly, and for years, his name didn't come back up in any meaningful way. There was no arrest, no media attention beyond the initial story, and no pressure from the public. It was just another gang-related killing.
And that's what happens, and that's how people get away. You know, the gang culture indeed believes in silence, the code of silence, or at least it used to adhere to that. Not so much these days. But apparently, well, he committed this allegedly and was on the run for years. Not even on the run. They just didn't have anything on him to arrest him. We see that they mention these cigarettes and this and that. So apparently they're about to tie him into the crime scene. I see the pictures that they keep showing of him are indeed of him in prison. Let's see.
LA County, the kind that stacks up in cold case files by the hundreds. For the Ruiz family, for Ernesto's kids, and for anyone who knew him on more than a street level, that silence hurt. The alley where he got dropped off, became just another spot to avoid after dark. Nobody put up murals. Nobody wore t-shirts. It was like folks decided to move on, except the detectives who kept that folder open even when the trail went cold. And in the streets of Monrovia, the killing faded into the background. Other shootings happened, other names replaced baby faces. But one thing stayed true. Everybody remembered who was there that night. They just weren't ready to talk about it, at least not yet. By the time the dust settled and folks started piecing together what had happened in that alley, the one name that kept coming up was Ernesto Babyface Granado. That was the one lying cold on the concrete, the one whose head caught the bullet, the one who thought for a second maybe he could disrespect someone like Sombra and walk away untouched. Granado wasn't some high-ranking shot caller, but he wasn't just a background character either. At 27, he was still considered young in the gang structure, but old enough to have put in a few years. He repped Monrovia Nuevo Barrio hard, rolled deep with known MNV faces like Teddy Tamayo, and had been active enough in the clique to be recognized at any function or alley meetup. People called him Babyface because he looked younger than he was. But despite the nickname, he wasn't soft. According to multiple reports, he had a temper on him, especially when drinking. He was loud, quick to snap, and not the type to back down when he felt tested. That night, folks said he was buzzed, not out of his mind, but loose enough to talk reckless, even around an OG like Sombra. Granado had kids, 2 daughters and a young son, all under 10 years old at the time. People close to him said he was trying to do better, trying to get out the mix slowly, maybe step away from the active set life. But the problem with trying to leave is that the streets don't always let go clean. You can't halfway bang. And that night, he slipped, not in the usual sense of getting caught by a rival set, but by thinking the code didn't apply to someone on his side. What's cold is that Ernesto probably didn't see it coming. He likely thought that his words, even if out of pocket, wouldn't cross the line. But the thing about disrespect is, it hits different when it's laced with race and when it's coming from someone younger, aimed at someone who spent years earning his place. In the end, whatever Babyface meant by that slur, it didn't matter. It came out, it landed hard, and in that moment, Sombra wasn't thinking about politics or loyalty or keeping the peace. All he saw was red. In most street conflicts, disrespect can be enough to spark a fight. But when race and rank get thrown into the mix, especially in gang culture, things don't just get heated, they get personal. And in Sombra's case, that's exactly what played out. Sombra wasn't just an older dude in the gang. He was a black man in a predominantly Latino set that repped Sureño culture, Monrovia Nuevo Barrio, a clique tied into the broader Southern California Sureño movement, which itself follows the code laid down by the Mexican mafia, also known as La M. That matters because La M's influence reaches deep into the street politics, especially when it comes to race. In the late 90s and early 2000s, it wasn't just about turf or drug corners anymore. Latino gangs in Southern California, under pressure from La M, began distancing themselves from black gangs. Some were even ordered not to do business with them, let alone show any kind of unity. And that shift from prison politics started bleeding into the neighborhoods. Even gangs that used to tolerate black members started looking sideways at them. But Monrovia Nuevo Barrio, they still had a few non-Latino members, including some black and white homies. Sombra.
So did a lot of gangs. And yes, there was a lot of tension at that time and a lot of racial tension. And yes, the word did come down for Hispanic gangs to separate themselves and not to unify with black people and black gangs. This is when some of the wars began to start between the blacks and the Hispanics. And again, you know, at that juncture, he's representing his hood, it's ingrained in him, it's in his heart, but certainly he felt tension. He felt unwanted at times. He felt judged. And this is why I couldn't do it. You walking around your own homeboys, your crew, and you know that some of them are snickering or talking behind your back or calling you racial slurs behind your back. How can you live like that? And to the point where he just exploded. When it finally is put in his face, it comes out that this is how this individual feels, or other individuals, whatever. Then he blacks out, he loses it, pulls out his weapon, and pulls the trigger. Shouldn't have been there.
Was one of them, and not just in name. He had been around for years, earning rank through work, prison stints, and holding it down during beef. But even with all that, race was still a line he could never fully step over. That's what made the Ernesto moment so dangerous. When a younger Latino member like Babyface threw a racial slur Sombra's way, it wasn't just a personal insult, it was a public slap to his status. In a set like MNV, that kind of thing isn't supposed to happen, especially not in front of other homies. And if it does, the older head is expected to check it immediately. In gang culture, respect is survival. Once you lose that, you're done. People stop listening. Your name don't carry weight. And in a place like Monrovia, where street identity was wrapped tight with race and politics, Sombra knew that walking away from that insult could cost him more than just pride. It could make him look weak. According to Los Angeles County Sheriff's Detective David Contreras, who later worked parts of the case, the expectation is simple. If an OG is disrespected, especially in front of others, he must retaliate or be seen as soft. That's the mindset that ruled Sombra's reaction. He wasn't just reacting as a man who'd been insulted. He was responding as a soldier, trying to protect his name, his rep, and his spot in a system that wasn't designed to include him in the first place. And when that system gets tested, it doesn't forgive mistakes. Not for Babyface, who underestimated how far Sombra was willing to go, and not for Sombra, whose retaliation would eventually cost him everything. The case sat cold for almost 4 years. No arrests, no movement, no new witnesses coming forward. But behind the scenes, the files were never buried completely. Detectives still had that stack of evidence, including a few items from the scene that hadn't been tested back in 2004. One of them, a used Marlboro red cigarette butt. In 2008, law enforcement in the Monrovia Duarte area formed a special task force aimed at clamping down on gang violence that had spiraled out of control again. The shootings had picked back up and the community was on edge. As part of that push, old cases were being reopened, including the killing of Ernesto Babyface Granado. That's when Detective Stuart Levin from Monrovia PD started reviewing the scene reports from that August night. He noted the cigarette butt collected from the alley near where the shooting happened. Back then, it didn't mean much, but during a follow-up interview in 2009, Joseph Escobar casually mentioned he'd given a cigarette to a stranger that night. When asked to describe the guy, it matched up with Sombra, the same man Gabriella had seen trying to flee the scene after the shooting. With that detail, Detective Levin had the cigarette tested for DNA. The result came back solid, a match to Dexter Paul Williams, aka Sombra. Now they had something real, physical evidence placing Sombra at the scene. But that alone wasn't going to carry the case to a conviction. For a murder charge, especially in gang territory.
Exactly, that's not enough. But okay, that only proves that he was there. Apparently, many people were there. It was a party, a house party. Many people were in the alley, on the street where the incident itself transpired. So the fact that I'm sure there were many cigarette butts there, and many people who were smoking there, cigarette butts, weed, roaches, whatever, alcohol, bottles and cans that you can get DNA from. But that only proves that this individual was there at this party. Doesn't prove that he pulled any trigger. So certainly that was not enough to arrest him. But okay, so far he's been on the street for 4 years and they have not been able to arrest him or anyone else for Babyface's unaliving. Looks like that's about to come to an head, and they are indeed about to arrest this individual because they talking about this damn cigarette. Let's see what else they came up with as far as evidence is concerned to put on him.
You need more than DNA. You need someone to say what happened. You need someone to talk. That's where Jorge Snuffy Mendez came back into the picture. He'd been there the night of the shooting. detectives picked him up on a probation violation and used the opportunity to press him about the case. At first, he denied even being at the party, but over time, he started giving pieces. Eventually, he admitted he saw Sombra shoot Ernesto. It was the break they needed. Now they had DNA and a statement, but the streets don't let go that easy. And even though Jorge gave that initial account, keeping him on board through trial would turn out to be a whole different challenge. The first trial didn't go as planned. Jorge Mendez, who had already spoken to detectives about what he saw, backed out when it came time to testify. In court, he recanted his previous statement.
That's what happens with a lot of gangland snitches, a lot of former gang members that turn rat. They don't want to get on the stand. They'll make statements behind the scenes. They'll tell the police what the police want and need to know behind the scenes. They'll put it in black and white. They'll write it down, their statement. But they'll also let the police know, do not call me to testify. I'm not going to do it. Because in their mind, they can explain away why their name is inside of the paperwork. Or, the police are lying on me. When they say I said that and I made that statement, that's a lie. You see my signature on it. All this sort of stuff has been happening in the culture as far as concrete evidence that someone was working with authorities. So they feel like some of these snitches, I believe, that they can get around certain stuff if it hits the fan. But there's no way that you can get around getting on a stand against someone. There's no way that you can then say, I didn't snitch. You have to get on the stand in front of a whole courtroom, in front of your family, his homies sitting in the courtroom, your homies in the courtroom, and now you're on the stand saying this stuff. A lot of people don't have a stomach for that. And you have to face, the accused and whomever else in that courtroom. But behind those closed doors and in those interrogation rooms, when you don't have the public watching what you're doing, these individuals then tend to give up every damn thing and then come to court and say, I didn't say that, or I was coerced, or, they threatened me and that's why I said it. No, you said it because no one was around to hear or see you saying this. But the moment that someone is around, again, courtroom, you won't know parts of it. It seems to be the situation here where he said what he said, allegedly gave up the information on Sombra, but then when it comes time to go to court and testify and get in front of everyone and say, yeah, he pulled the trigger, he's a no-show.
That the prosecution's strongest piece of testimony collapsed in front of the jury. According to court records, Jorge had been relocated for his own safety, but even under protection, he said he felt unsafe. At one point, someone even threw a brick through his window, a clear message from someone on the outside that he wasn't as hidden as he thought. For most gang witnesses, that kind of pressure is all it takes to go quiet. The trial ended in a hung jury, no verdict, no conviction. But the district attorney's office wasn't letting it go. They pushed for a second trial, and this time they came with stronger protections and a better understanding of how to prep Jorge for what was coming. When the retrial started in late 2014, Jorge agreed to testify under a grant of immunity. On the stand, he told the jury what he saw in the alley that night. He said he watched Sombra and Babyface arguing. He heard the slur. He saw Ernesto turn his back. Then he watched Sombra pull a gun and fire one shot. What stood out was the way Jorge explained his decision to testify. He said he kept thinking about Ernesto's kids, how they'd never see their father again. He said he pictured his own daughter and couldn't imagine her growing up without him. That hit the jury hard. It was one of those moments where the courtroom got quiet, not out of drama, but because what he said was just honest. Besides Jorge's testimony, the prosecution had other pieces to lean on. Derek Travieso Charles, another MNV member, had once told detectives, "Shadow smoke baby." He didn't testify in court, but that statement was introduced through the detective's own testimony, reinforcing what Jorge said. And then there were the recorded jail calls. In one, Sombra told his mom that everybody needs to be on the same page when they talk. That kind of talk, it didn't look good in front of a jury. With DNA on the cigarette, Jorge's statement, and Sombra's own words, trying to manage the story from jail, the pieces finally locked in. After the retrial wrapped and the jury came back with the verdict, Dexter Sombra Williams was found guilty of first-degree murder. They also found the firearm enhancement to be true, meaning he personally used a gun that resulted in death. That alone added 25 years to whatever time he was going to serve. But this wasn't Sombra's first strike. By 2014, he already had 2 serious prior felony convictions on his record, cases that weren't minor or easy to explain away. The 3 strikes law in California doesn't play around. With this 3rd conviction, the judge had no choice but to bring the hammer down. Sombra was sentenced to 110 years to life in prison. That breaks down like this: 25 years to life for the murder.
I don't know, it still seems to me like they didn't have a lot of evidence on him. Let me know what y'all think in the comments. They got an age-old cigarette, okay, proving that he was at that party. He was in the vicinity at some point. Could have been the day before, 2 days before, whatever. But okay, let's say he was there at the party. But other than that, they had this one individual who apparently changed his story or wouldn't follow through with his story, at least not at first. They had his testimony saying that he witnessed it. He witnessed Babyface and heard the racial slur, and then witnessed Sombra pull the trigger. It's just that. It's just his word, apparently. But oftentimes, that's all it takes in court.
Under the 3 strikes rule to 75 years. Add 25 years more for the gun enhancement, plus another 10 for his prior felonies. It was the kind of sentence that makes parole not even worth dreaming about. He was 44 years old when he stood in that courtroom. The judge didn't sugarcoat it. She made it clear this wasn't just about one night or one bad decision. This was about a man with a long history of violence who, when given the chance to walk away, chose instead to pull the trigger. Now serving time in California State Prison, Sombra is locked up among the same Sureño gang population he once stood with. But the irony's thick. A black man in a prison system where Sureños usually don't rock with anyone outside their race has to live out the rest of his days trying to survive in the same environment that made him. The streets remember what happened to Babyface, but not because it was a war story. This wasn't some gang rivalry or territory beef. This was internal, one of their own, taken out by one of their own. At the core of it, this was about what happens when race, pride, and gang politics collide. Sombra didn't kill a rival, he killed a homie. But in that alley, in that moment, none of that mattered. All he saw was disrespect. And when the code says you can't let that slide, there's only one way things usually end. Ernesto Granado didn't get a mural. His name rarely pops up in gang retrospectives, but he left behind 3 kids, and for them, what happened that night wasn't street justice, it was just loss. Sombra will likely die behind bars, not because he got caught slipping, but because he chose to live by a rule book that never made room for forgiveness. And the saddest part, in the end, the code he was trying to protect, it didn't protect him back. Sometimes the enemy isn't the rival gang down the block. It's the silence, the pride, and the code that turns homies into enemies. And when that line gets crossed, there's no reset button, just time, lots of it, and no way out. Before.
Wow. All right, there you have it. Sombra found guilty of murdering Babyface based on the testimony of the other individual. Let me know what y'all think in the comments about this one, man. Clearly, if this is accurate, he lost it or took, umbrage to the racial slur and did what he did, man. Let me know what y'all think in the comments about this one, man. That was pretty deep, man. And like he said, as I've been saying, the irony of it all. You're in prison for your gang, and now you have to navigate prison life with a life sentence with your own gang turning on you with you having to be friends with your ops now, all of that stuff, man. Certainly he's having it rough in there for many different reasons. Bananas. Stay safe and stay free. People.